Long before the first words were spoken, before the first myths were told or written down, the Earth was home to beings who could think deeply, perceive patterns in space and time, and reshape the landscape around them. They were not modern humans, not yet. They belonged to a larger family of humans, now mostly extinct, who emerged out of Africa over 1 million years ago and spread across the continents. These early ancestors of ours, known in the fossil record as Homo erectus, were explorers, survivors, and most importantly, the ancestors of several other hominin species that developed in isolation for hundreds of thousands of years. Among their descendants were the Neanderthals in Ice Age Europe and the Denisovans in Asia, as well as other lesser-known or now-lost branches of the human family. Each group adapted uniquely to its environment, evolving different bodies, brains, and cognitive styles. These were not simple creatures. Their brains, in many cases, were larger than our own. They used tools, controlled fire, and buried their dead. But they did not speak in the way we do. There is no evidence that they developed a fully recursive symbolic language, and yet they left behind evidence of thought, profound thought, and that evidence is all around us. Only we've forgotten how to read it. What they left behind were not words carved in stone, but the stones themselves, arranged in massive geometrical patterns. Across the Earth, from the tropics to the Arctic Circle, from the deep forests of South America to the high plains of Asia, they shaped the land into forms that defy explanation under any conventional historical theory. The Amazon, once assumed to be untouched wilderness, is now revealing beneath its forest floor a vast network of perfectly measured circles, squares, and linear causeways, clearly constructed with intent long before the rainforest grew to hide them. In the deserts of Peru, shapes hundreds of meters across were carved into the earth with such precision they can only be seen in full from the air, despite being made long before human flight was even conceived. In Asia, vast pyramidal forms lie buried beneath centuries of dust and sediment, their proportions still echoing mathematical relationships now taught in modern engineering schools. On islands like Malta, temples were rebuilt and reoriented over tens of thousands of years, always to the same distant star, rising in its slow celestial rhythm every 30,000 years or so. These structures are not shrines, they are not fortresses, they are not tombs or homes. They are quite simply inexplicable if we insist on applying our own cultural assumptions about religion, economics, or warfare to them. The usual fallback is to call them ritual sites and then quietly move on. But to say they were ritualistic is not an explanation, it is a placeholder for ignorance. It is an admission that these things are known to be deliberate and monumental, but their function lies outside the categories we are willing to entertain. So let us entertain a new category. Let us consider what kind of mind builds massive geometric forms, often with no internal structure, aligns them to astronomical events that unfold over generations, and repeats these alignments across entire continents. Let us ask what kind of intelligence sees the sky as a clock, the land as a canvas, and proportion as a form of memory. Such a mind would not need words. In fact, it might not be able to use words at all, but it could think in shape, in resonance, in rhythm. It could remember patterns not by reciting them, but by walking them. It could teach not by telling, but by constructing. These ancient structures, then, are not monuments to gods. They are tools. They are the physical residue of an intelligence that communicated not through sound, but through space. The minds behind these works were likely non-verbal, not mute but non-linguistic, using gesture, vibration, and geometric coherence to share meaning. They may have hummed, drummed, or resonated sounds across stone and soil to feel alignment. What they could not encode in speech, they embedded in the land. In this way, the Earthworks became a kind of textbook, not written in alphabet or script, but laid out in proportion and angle, in alignment and reflection. These were records of knowledge too complex to hold in a single brain, and too important to risk forgetting. They were not just places, they were thoughts, externalized. Once we begin to understand the structures in this way, the apparent mystery dissolves. Their size is not extravagant, it is essential. Without writing, knowledge must be embodied. Without language, memory must be architectural. And without speech, communication must occur through common reference, which means shared patterns in shared environments. The land becomes the medium, and geometry the language. This view also makes sense of something that has long puzzled archaeologists: the global consistency of certain geometric principles. Across widely separated regions and thousands of years, similar ratios, alignments, and astronomical references appear again and again. How could disconnected cultures with no contact and no common tongue arrive at the same designs? Perhaps because they were not disconnected. Perhaps they inherited those designs from common predecessors, not in the genetic sense, but in the cognitive lineage of form. And if those predecessors could not speak to one another, but could all read the land and sky, then geometry was their bridge. So, it's important to understand that this world was not one of dominance or conquest. It was actually a world of parallel evolution. Different human lineages coexisted in ecological balance. Neanderthals, Denisovans, and others, well, they occupied distinct territories, each one shaped by their environment, each developing their own ways of perceiving and responding to the world. Without the abstraction of symbolic language, there was no ideology to spread, no empire to build. There was only adaptation, survival, and memory inscribed in form. This balance held for hundreds of thousands of years. The Earth was full of human minds, but no one lineage held dominion. Each species evolved in its niche, responding to the rhythms of the planet. This was a long equilibrium, a stable coexistence, not because it was harmonious, but because no one species had yet broken free from the constraints of space and time. But then something changed. Time is a great cycle, and catastrophe and rebirth are inevitable, but that is a story for another day. Subscribe and be sure not to miss it. As for now, we must pause to understand what this first world really was. It was not a blank slate, it was a network of intelligent, non-verbal minds communicating across space and generations through stone, soil, and star. The structures they left behind are not mysteries. They are the visible artifacts of memory systems, knowledge-sharing architectures, and interspecies communication. They are not proof of lost gods or alien visitors. They are the logical outcome of a world in which thinking beings could not speak, but could measure, align, and remember. The first language of intelligence was not sound, it was shape, and the first books were made of earth.